Iran and Japan are located in the west and east of Asia, and although their geographical distance is relatively far, their relationship goes back to ancient times. Iranian antiques from 6th century in Japanese museum, and particularly in Sushain Museum in Nara city, indicate that our two countries has established their trade relations through the Silk Road. But direct contact and observation of each other by Persians and Japanese would wait for the establishment of Japan's relations with the world by the modernizing administration of the Meiji period, 1868-1912. After the end of World War II, Irano-Japanese trading was expanded. Japan was interested in Iranian oil and market, and reciprocally, Iran considered Japan as an important oil customer and a source for procurement of industrial goods and know-how. A salient symbol of these relations was negotiation of Idemitsu Oil Company with National Iranian Oil Company in November 1952 to import Iranian oil, which the British government had blocked exportation. Idemitsu sent an oil tanker called Nishomaru to Abadan and returned to Japan with a cargo of gasoline and gas oil in 1953. Japan's trade with Iran developed markedly after the oil crisis in 1973. Iran was considered as one of the safest countries for Japanese investment. In February 1979, the Japanese government officially recognized the Islamic Republic of Iran's government and expressed its interest to extend his ties. These relations continue their development, and the two countries remained good trading partners for each other. A look at Iran-Japan trade volume in recent years reveals that in spite of economic and commercial interaction between the two countries, the volume of trade has entered to a recessionary stage, which is mostly related to sanctions against Iran and not an incidence of bilateral relations. Currently, the unilateral US sanctions against Iran are the main cause of this recession. The Japanese banks and corporations, since share capital and activities with American companies, have been affected by sanctions. In other words, the special and strategic relations of Japan with US is the main cause of the slump of Iran-Japan relations. The fundamental nuclear policy of Iran has been clearly stressed by Iranian high officials, and particularly by the Supreme Leader. Iran's atomic program is meant for peaceful purposes only, such as power generation and medical isotopes. We wish the opposite side will have the necessary political resolve for the resolution of nuclear issue. In that case, we would have no concern with respect to assuring the world about the peaceful nature of our nuclear energy program, because according to the fatwa or religious decree issued by the Supreme Leader and based on the strategic needs of Iran, nuclear weapons have no place in our national security doctrine and even detrimental to our national security. Iran, as a victim of mass destruction weapons, has always insisted for global disarmament of nuclear weapons, and as a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, from July 1st, 1968, has always respected its commitments and aimed at banning nuclear tests. Iran's nuclear activities have always been under complete supervision of International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, and the inspectors of this agency have regularly visited Iranian nuclear sites and published their inspections reports, despite the explicit position of Iran and inspections conducted by IAEA. Some Western countries, having their judgment on unproven sources, have raised concerns regarding our peaceful nuclear activities, and by adding political aspects on nuclear issue, have created obstacles for both sides to dispel doubts and engage in serious and substantive talks. Both the US Congress and Senate have turned to unilateral sanctions against Iran, and thereby have imposed restrictions on Iran's oil exports to Japan, as well as procurement of industrial needs of Iran from Japan. Dr. Hassan Rohani was elected as the 11th president of the Islamic Republic of Iran on June 14, 2013, securing over 50% of the ballot based on a 73% of 50 million eligible voters. According to what has come out of interview during past 2.5 months and what is written in the said book, Dr. Rohani intends to use his experiences and internal and international status to begin a new round of negotiations with P5+1 group of countries during his term of office, 4 years, which is 4 years. First of all, he believes finding a solution to the nuclear issue. He believes finding a solution to the nuclear issue needs political will and not a lengthy negotiations. And now, as the president, he declared that the political will exists. And at the same time, Iran takes into account the other side concerns and is willing for the nuclear issue to reach to a final position within a reasonable time frame. It means that nuclear negotiation team and Supreme National Security Council of Iran will be headed by someone except Dr. Jalili. Second, Dr. Rohani has expressed clear views on nuclear issue during his interviews and talks. In one of these interviews that took place last month, he said, "The uranium enrichment is a right for all nations. According to NPT, even the other countries were called to help a country that intends to have peaceful nuclear activity. What we are looking for in the negotiations is to win mutual trust with the international community. Reaching to mutual interests is also possible. The negotiation result should be as a win-win for both sides." Third, the selection of the negotiating team for nuclear talks by Dr. Rohani shows the essence of what the new president intends to put to action. In his first practice move, he chose Dr. Zarif as the Minister of Foreign Affairs. There is a high probability that Dr. Zarif will conduct nuclear negotiation team instead of Dr. Jalili. He served as the permanent representative of Iran to the United Nations from 2002 to 2007. He was Deputy Foreign Minister for Legal and International Affairs from 1992 to 2002, and he had the experience of participating in the negotiations with international institutions for the resolution 598 ending Iran-Iraq war. The assignment of Dr. Salehi, former foreign minister, as the president of Iran Atomic Energy Organization is also having its own meaning. Dr. Salehi's views on nuclear issue is very close to Dr. Rohani's team. Another important international issue that Dr. Rohani has expressed his views in his response to the some declaration of US administration officials for holding talks with Iran. He considers, as many other Iranian high officials, these declarations are contrary to imposition of unilateral sanctions, which has taken a higher speed after his election. Therefore, in reply to a question regarding holding talks with the West, he mentioned the declarations of the White House are not in harmony with what we witness from their behavior. And he adds, in quote, generally speaking, I'm not holding a pessimistic view on future talks. What is criterion for us is the political actions of US. If they come forward with mutual respect and equal positions and avoid hidden agendas, the way for our interaction is open. End of quote. The President urged US to clarify that it would never interfere in Iran's domestic affairs, recognize Iran's nuclear rights, and put aside its unilateral and bullying policies. Although Iran-Japan ties have been mostly influenced by Iran's peaceful nuclear issue and is related to Iran-US relations, but the two countries are ancient civilization whose relations span countries and span centuries and perfectly capable of managing all aspects of their relationship with appropriate degree of care, attention, and independence. In this context, Iran can be considered by our Japanese-friendly nation as an important country geostrategically, which has a prominent place in the Middle East. Both Iran and Japan have been victims of mass destruction weapons. Iran, from its northern frontiers, has remained in a comprehensive interaction with Central Asia and Caucasus in political, economic, and cultural fields. We have also developed very strong links with Iraq in the West, with Afghanistan in the East after change of governments. The volume of trade with Turkey has increased strongly during recent years, and the transfer of gas project to Pakistan and from there to India and East Asia is going on. In terms of energy supplies, Iran holds the world's second largest gas reserve, third largest oil reserves, and therefore is an important player in providing world energy needs. The presence of Japan's oil and gas companies in Iranian projects prior to unlawful sanctions and their present involvement in Persian Gulf Rim countries allows highly profitable activities, mainly in energy projects as well as oil and gas and petroleum products, whenever Iran and Japan resume actively their long-lasting cooperation. Considering the probable evolution of Iran-West relationship in general and Iran and US in particular, the possibility of a strengthening of Iran-Japan ties after a period of slump is not far from reality. Of course, one could comment more definitely about our bilateral ties in the coming month, that a new team in Iran becomes more involved in state matters. A new round of talks begins with P5+1 group of countries, as well as the effect of recent evolution of parliamentary changes in Japan and its effects on international matters. I think first I should mention that comparing Iran with North Korea and talking about their sanctions vis-a-vis these two countries that somehow you will see in the media is a completely different thing. Actually, Iran is a member of NPT. Iran is observe the inspectors of IAEA, like many other member of NPT, reports to IAEA. Inspectors come to Iran, and the cameras are working in the nuclear sites. If there is some ambiguity that has become the base of all sanctions, the ambiguity also exists vis-a-vis South Korean nuclear activity, vis-a-vis so many others. But in regard to Iran, Iran is being seen as equal to North Korea. And the only thing that is being said about Iran is some claims, not proven claims, that now exist against so many countries of NPT. But we think that it has become more politicized. We think that there are some other things that have originated this type of, as you said, very strong and strict sanctions.